Okay, so we're going to start out with a video that sheds a little bit more light on the JDM SLX-DC and its IDC4 braking system. Now, this reel appears to be a prototype as it has an unpainted raw aluminum finish on the spool, and it looks to be spooled up with fluorocarbon line. So apparently this cast is made in brake mode 3, and in the American market SLX-DC as well as the CURADO DC, brake mode 3 is the fluorocarbon mode, so that seems logical, right? Now he hits a cast of over 92 meters, and that's just over 100 yards for us Americans. Now that's pretty impressive, but keep in mind that the lure he was casting is the JACKALL TN Trigon lipless crankbait that has an enlarged lip to stabilize the lure mid-flight to keep it from tumbling, therefore giving you longer casts. And this looks like the model that probably weighs at least 1 ounce. Now the next cast is what's telling. Now he's casting in brake mode 2. Now if you own an American market SLX-DC or CURADO DC, then you know that using fluorocarbon line in brake mode 2 usually means an exploded spool. But here in the JDM SLX-DC, apparently it can handle fluorocarbon line just fine in brake mode number 2. Now the cast went about 5 meters farther, which is about an extra 16 feet, but what this tells me is that the JDM SLX-DC brake programming is definitely different than ours. So that means I will most definitely be getting one to find out for myself. So since they came out with a JDM version of the SLX-DC, it only makes sense that they would come out with a JDM version of the CURADO DC, but this reel is coming out in the form of the Exsence DC SS. Now the Exsence lineup is an inshore saltwater line of tackle made mainly to target sea bass, and generally you'll be fishing from shore or wade fishing, and a lot of times at night, so that means long casting is a necessity. Now this reel looks to be a murdered out or blacked out CURADO DC with pretty much all the same features like X-ship and micro module gears, but it adds a couple of new features that a lot of you guys might like, such as a clicking drag and big foam power knobs. But the big change for the Exsence DC SS over the CURADO DC is supposed to be the IDC4 brake programming. So all the Exsence DC reels from the original that came out in 2012 to the super expensive 2017 model to this new SS model are designed to be fished mostly with braided line. So apparently with this new Exsence DC SS, the IDC4 brakes will feature 3 different braid modes and 1 fluorocarbon mode, and they call it the IDC4 Exsence Tune. Now, it does not appear that they modified the spool in any way like the 2017 model in order to make it hold less line. Now, the original Exsence DC was a cult sleeper reel that a lot of tackle enthusiasts imported to America for bass fishing, and that reel is one of the top performance bargains of all time. And that brings us to the price. Now, this new SS model is priced pretty much exactly like the original Exsence DC, and in fact, Digitalka has them listed for around $285 for pre-order. So that is more than the CURADO DC, but it's about the same price as the original 2012 version. Now, just to clarify, this reel is not going to be replacing the super expensive 2017 model. It's going to be sold alongside that as a much more affordable option. Now, maybe the sales of the 2017 super expensive model were not so great, so Shimano may have decided to go back to the original formula of giving you lots of performance for relatively little cost. Now, I can tell you this much, the original Exsence DC had a much better and much more special braking system, and if you want to see the original 2012 Exsence DC in action, I'm going to leave a link to a video that I did on it in the description box. Now, as for the new Exsence DC SS, I don't think I'll be getting one because in this video footage from Shimano, it doesn't really show me anything that makes me really want to try one out. Now, the next reel I'm going to cover is the Calcutta Conquest DC. Now, if you're thinking that they came out with this reel last year, you'd be right, but that was actually in the 200 size only. Now, this year they added a 100 size to the Conquest DC lineup that is much smaller in profile, and they also added a high gear ratio option for the 200 size. Now, in the past, Shimano actually had a tiny round DC reel called the Conquest 100Dc, and I actually had one of those reels, but I sold it pretty soon after I got it, because once the novelty of a tiny round DC reel wore off, I really didn't use it that much to justify what I had paid for it, which was close to $600 at the time. Now, it appears this reel is going to use the same 100 size Conquest body, and I can tell you it's pretty tiny and palmable for a round reel because I have the Conquest BFS that uses the same 100 size frame. Now, the good news for the 100 size is that they are actually giving you the full IDC5 brake system instead of the IDC4 brake system that the previous Conquest 100Dc had. Now, I personally don't want one, but if you do, it looks like the prices for these reels will be close to $500 and an expected release date of March. So now I'm going to talk about the only spinning reel of interest revealed at this year's Yokohama Fishing Show, and that's the new Twin Power. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this reel, that's because it's pretty much been strictly a JDM model up until now. Now, from the information that I've read from the Japanese tackle bloggers, it seems like this Twin Power is basically a budget version of the ultra expensive top of the line STELLA. So that means it's going to get a metal frame and a metal rotor, just like the STELLA. And in fact, it pretty much has most of the important features of the STELLA, like the micro module 2 gears, silent drive, the G-free body, the long stroke spool, etc., etc. And in fact, in this video, Takuma Hata is putting a blindfold on some Shimano pros who are known to use Stellas exclusively and swapping the reels out and trying to make them guess which reel is which. So needless to say, Shimano is wanting us to know that this reel will be nearly indistinguishable from a STELLA when you're turning the handle. Now, the significance of that is that the STELLA is known to be the smoothest and most refined spinning reel in the world. Now, this new twin power is actually now being brought over to the American market, and as you can see, it's already listed on TATULA warehouse for pre-order. And as you can also see, just because it's a budget STELLA, it's still pretty expensive, starting at around $400 and filling a big gap between the Sustain and Exsence spinning reels. So if you want one, it looks like they will be available sometime in mid-February at TATULA warehouse. Now, the big rod release this year for Shimano is the newly designed Zodias lineup. So in recent years, Shimano has been making an effort to trickle down the better technology from its more expensive reels down to the more affordable reels, and a great example of that is the CURADO DC and the SLX DC. So this year they are showing us that they are doing it to their rod lineup as well, as seen in this new Zodias lineup that adds the carbon monocoque grip that was previously only available in their more expensive rods like the Poison series and the World Shaola series. Now, the carbon monocoque handle is supposed to improve sensitivity, but the problem is I don't feel vibrations at the butt end of the rod. Now, I have a couple of the old Zodias rods, but I have to say that they don't really impress me all that much. Now, yes, they are light, but I feel that the sensitivity is only average and it doesn't have that lively feeling like, let's say, the X Pride. So what I'm trying to say is that I hope that they actually improve the blanks themselves instead of just using the old blanks and throwing that monocoque handle on it and calling it a day. Now, since the Zodias is a popular seller here in America and a lot of people seem to love them, I'm pretty sure they will be coming here and more than likely be priced either the same or maybe even a little bit cheaper, like they've done with the Poison Adrena and the X Pride series. Now, I do plan on getting one of these rods once they bring them over to America, just to see if I can tell a difference in performance and sensitivity versus the old model. Now, the last item I'm going to talk about is actually going to be a lure. Now, I think the name of this thing is called the JACKALL, and I'm going to be talking about the 115 size specifically. Now, this size has something that I haven't seen before in a lure, and as you can probably tell, it's going to be that little flashing silver piece in the middle. Now, there have been lures with shiny foil inserts around for a long time, but this JACKALL is the first one I've seen that attaches that shiny metal piece to a couple of very weak springs to make it quiver, therefore giving it a flashing effect when the lure is stopped or paused. In fact, they actually call it Flash Boost. Now, I doubt they will be bringing these to America, but I hope that they put that feature in some of their suspending jerkbaits, because if they do, I will definitely be importing some. Alright, so unless they unveil something new at the Osaka fishing show that's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks, that's going to be it for the 2020 Japan fishing show coverage this year. And all in all, I'd say it was a big year for the JDM market, but a somewhat tame year for us who look to Japan for all the best tackle releases. Alright guys, thanks a lot.